Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Woo! I was waiting for this music. The one song that I really recognized in this entire movie, because we are here to talk about Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. It's more commonly referred to as WTF.
Yes.
Which is, you know, a little fun, and of course that's because it stars Tina Fey. So this movie was going to be about bringing the fun to a war zone reporter.
As you do.
Yeah, of course. I'm Sara Stretton, and I'm joined here by writer, producer, professional geek is what we're going with.
That's how I bill myself,
Zach
yes.
Wilson. Thank you for joining us. You normally join us for a lot of comic book movies, all sorts of stuff, but you're just a movie fan in general.
I do other things here, Sarah.
I don't know. I think you pretty much only do comic book things, Zach.
I mean, it is my niche.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing.
We covered Anomalisa, which I feel like branches out of territory for both of us. So.
And that is the voice of Jeff Graham, who is a writer and always here with us at AfterBuzz and the studio as well. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if we've ever done
I don't think we've hosted together yet. I'm trying to think. I've covered with like Lauren and Rock. I feel like Sarah Stratton's a big face at AfterBuzz, so I'm honored to be hosting with you.
Thanks. I feel like I'm such a small face because I always come in and I'm like, I only do the movies.
Yeah.
So we are going to be talking about this movie here. If you're new to watching us on the Popcorn Talk Network for Anatomy of a Movie, we like to break down the film. So we don't just go in and try and like criticize and give scores. We really want to break down how these movies were made, what went into them, production, casting, what worked, what didn't. Of course, our general opinions do get involved. So in that point, we're not completely, unbiased. But let's get into some quick thoughts on what this movie did. Jeff, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I was very excited about this movie. I've been tracking its development for a while because I really like Tina Fey and Robert Carlock in general, which we'll get into more specifically. But I liked it overall. There were things that disappointed me, but that's probably because I went in with really high expectations. All that being said, I did like the movie.
I went in, I don't know if my expectations were necessarily measured, but I really liked this movie. I thought it was well written. I thought Tina Fey did a great job with the acting she was getting. I have some more thoughts on that, but that we'll get into later. But I really thought that they nailed this story and managed to make a very watchable comedy drama in a very intense setting, and it never felt like it was too far one direction. For me, it found the perfect balance between the two. And
I think that's what they were going for. So for them, I think you were like what they wanted to hear from the audience. Yeah. For me, I've been talking about this movie for a while on my other show, Box Office Breakdown, and I have to admit I was not very excited to see this movie. Just based off, and I'm a Tina Fey fan. I just looked at this. It was, for some reason, the marketing was really bringing up memories of Our Brand Is Crisis, which Sandra Bullock did last fall that didn't do well. And I was just like, I just don't know. And there's been a lot of war movies, especially about like Afghanistan or the Middle East. And I was like, is this something we've seen kind of too much of right now in film? Has it been overloaded? I feel like the industry has kind of been transitioning more towards like drug lords than
cartels.
Yes, like that's kind of the new focus.
Yeah.
So I was like, is this kind of behind schedule? Should this have come out a while ago?
I hear you.
But I saw it, and I did really enjoy it. I thought that I had been hearing some negative things about this before going in, and I thought that the comedy aspect that they added to this war zone was done very well. For me, it wasn't laugh out loud, but it was funny. And it had some really strong moments of heart for me.
Yeah.
Like there were some plot points that they included that I was like, that's really interesting to talk about. Or I really like this relationship. So it had some good points. If I'm going to pick a Tina Fey movie, this isn't my favorite one of hers, but I like where she's going for her career.
What would be your favorite Tina Fey movie off the cuff? I know that's not fair to ask that question, but...
The problem is I will go with Mean Girls.
I think I would too. It's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And her involvement in it and her character in it, I love it.
I also love, did you guys see This Is Where I Leave You?
Yes.
I loved that movie. There was a lot of, that movie was kind of polarized, but that might be my favorite Tina Fey movie.
I liked her in that movie. I wasn't a huge fan of the structure of that film.
The thing is, like, I don't know that I've seen... I'm a big fan of Tina Fey because like 30 Rock is one of my all-time favorite comedies, but I don't know that I've seen a ton of her movies.
I mean, she is a very well-rounded entertainment professional.
She is.
And I think that's also part of the reason why this movie got made. We can get into a little bit of production because Tina Fey doesn't just stand in front of the camera. She's also a writer. She has done everything from TV to comedy to movies. And in this, she also took on her second role as a producer. The first movie she produced was Sisters, came out this past December, obviously with her good friend Amy. Lots of laughs. But this was her second one. And then she brought on her mentor, Lorne Michaels, SNL. He doesn't do a ton of movie producing.
Yeah, right. Well, it's like Tina Fey. As soon as his name came up in the crowd, I was like, well, yeah,
right,
of course.
Well, and a lot of people involved. You have the writer, who she's been partners with for 10 years.
Right.
All these people.
Yeah, I think, actually... Robert Carlock's name on this is what got me in the theater.
Same here. Well, actually, I haven't. Yeah, because he's been attached to the script since last summer, so that's what really got me excited.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, it was really that because Tina Fey's done other movies that like I haven't like rushed out to see. Like I will watch Sisters eventually, but I wasn't like rushing to see it in theaters. But Robert Carlock, I respect his writing so much from the television that he's done. Between like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock, it's just like yes. I will, if the two of them paired together as a team, that's what I want to see. Like, I believe this will be quality because of those two people working together.
But they did work together, obviously, but this was a separation for them. Going to Carlock, they normally write together. They're writing partners, and he really took this one on his own.
Yeah.
This is his screenplay.
Yeah, but it's still, even if he wrote the script, it's still... I wouldn't have known what to do with this if Tina Fey's name was on the script. Just because like her brand of comedy in terms of writing is so specific and like not dark like this at all. I've never seen. I don't know anything from Robert Carlock solo
enough
really.
To say that he couldn't be dark.
Yeah, but
he wrote. He had solo credit on the 30 Rock episode Cooter. I don't know if you remember that one with the gay bomb, and like
that's. Oh, I did not know that he wrote that particular episode. But
that was when I was like,
so much.
I know. I was like, I want to follow the career of this writer because this is just too brilliant. Like that, it makes sense when you kind of put those pieces together.
Yeah, but even just creatively, to those two people working together, because he knows. I think really what it came down to for me is that he knows how to write Tina Fey.
Right.
He knows how to write for her in a way that is really why I think her performance was on point in this movie. Was not because like she did anything so big and amazing, like give her an Oscar nomination. I don't know that she did anything that really would warrant like that, but every scene that she's in is perfect.
Well, Carlock has pushed about because he knows her so well, he knew how far he could push her. And like there were scenes as a person where he was worried about kind of giving her that last scene where she goes and she's talking to the vet who has been injured and she feels responsible for. But he wanted to push her there and felt that how that situation was handled was she could be dramatic. There could be some comedy to it. There can be some truth to it. But he's not pulling a like tears and breakdown scene from Tina Fey.
Yeah, and that's part of what I think was so strong about the script was he knew he knew who he was working with, he knew what she was capable of, put that onto the page, and it worked.
Yeah.
It just worked in all facets for her. Like it didn't push her too far, but it pushed her into places we've never seen her.
I agree. Before. I think that how do you guys feel about teams consistently working together, because I think it kind of benefits films in certain ways, and sometimes it can take away. I think you can, for instance, in this movie, we had two teams, really. You kind of have the SNL 30 Rock team of Lorne and Tina and everyone, and then you also have your directing team,
right,
which has worked together. I'm going to get everyone's name right in my, packet of 10 billion notes. But you have, because I want
Phil has taught you wise.
He has. He's really taught me, but he's over-taught me that I have so much now that I'm like, well, now
While
I
you
can
sift
get
through that,
through
Date
these
Night
little
was a
things.
great Tina Fey movie, by the way.
That was a great movie.
Date Night.
Okay.
I haven't seen that
But
movie
this
in a
is
long
fun.
time.
This is what I want to get to. Directing team was Glenn Ficarra and John Requa, but they've directed and wrote Focus, which had Margot Robbie, who we see in this.
I didn't know they wrote Focus. Huh.
According to IMDb.
I'm
they
sure.
did.
I know. I'm sure you're right. I just didn't realize. Yeah.
And then they wrote Bad Santa, which has Billy Bob Thornton, who we also see in this. And then they directed Crazy Stupid Love. So they have a team, they're set up. So you have this team going in for directing, and you have the SNL team trying to combine and make a war reporting movie.
I couldn't help but see the little Fargo team with Billy Bob Thornton and Martin Freeman.
That's true. Everyone kind of seemed to know each other.
Yeah.
And we'll probably get even more into that in casting. But they bring about this movie. We have to also talk about how this is based on a book. Mm-hmm. I think most people know it's based on a memoir. The Taliban Shuffle, Strange Days in Afghanistan and Pakistan by Kim Barker. They did make the choice to pretty much remove Pakistan for the movie. Kim gave up the rights during development. Tina had found this book, liked it.
I love how she found this.
I do too.
Do you want to explain?
Yeah, she basically said in an interview that she only found the book, and this is the quote here, in the New York Times review of the book, Michiko Takatani, the reviewer, said, "Oh, Kim writes herself like a Tina Fey character, and because I'm an egomaniac and a jerk, I was like, I'm gonna read this book. It's a character like me." It's such a Tina Fey thing to do.
At least she can admit it.
Somebody, and to admit it, like somebody compared her to Kim Barker and was like, "You're like this person." Well, I'll read it.
Like, then I can read it.
I would too. If I was
like
as
it.
powerful as Tina Fey and Michiko Kakata, I can never say her name, but that New York Times reviewer said that I was like a character in this book, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm reading this book.
100%.
Just not
But-
only. Go ahead, Phil. What were you gonna say?
But this is the second instance that this has happened. It happened with Daredevil. So I think people just got to throw in random actors that they want into reviews and just get them cast that way.
I think you mean Deadpool.
That's it. Correct, Zach. Just
Ryan
testing
Reynolds.
you.
Thank you.
It would be
This
so
is why
interesting.
you are here.
Yeah.
See, we knew that we were
I
going to
know.
play upon
I'm
that
just
character.
proving you right.
But we do. So they find this book. She goes into production. She brings, and they, as we talked about writing, they changed a lot from the book, but that was completely with the blessing of Kim Barker. She gave over her rights and was like, I understand you have to make this into a movie. I understand that you kind of have to craft a story around that, and was okay with it. And we've seen there's a lot of based on true stories, and normally you have some polarizing divisions. Either some people are like, well, the family was involved, or the people were involved from part one and had approval on every single note, or you have, we're gonna kind of hide what's true and false and make it malleable, and maybe we shouldn't even base. And this does, hey, this is the story, but we're not gonna make it completely real because we're gonna try and make a movie, and everyone just acknowledges it up front. So I wanted to know what you guys thought about some of the choices they made. Number one of the biggest ones was they changed her character to being a TV reporter instead of a written reporter. I think that was a big working choice. It makes sense,
Right.
Because
Yeah.
then you already have the medium involved.
Kim Barker was not happy about that. Did you see that quote?
What was the quote? Do you have it?
Yeah, she said, "That's fine. I'm not going to complain about that. I think they kept it true to the core of the book." Oh no, wait, that was a different quote.
I was gonna say, I was like, this isn't that bad.
That was
I
a
was
totally
like,
different quote.
If you can find.
Oh, she said, "We hate that as print reporters, but I get why they did it."
Was that on Fresh Air that she said that? I think I listened to that interview.
I don't remember exactly. I
Okay.
think I found it on Detroit News.
Nice.
But she's never been against the movie. She's liked where it went. She understood why they cut out Pakistan. That was another part.
Yeah.
Margot Robbie is a complete completely fictionalized character. That is not part of her story. They use that as a foil for Tina Fey. And then a big part of the importance of the script was her relationship with her fixer. Like, that was a true component. And for me, it was a relationship that really worked well.
Me too.
Yeah.
In the script. And I'm going to get the actor's name.
Christopher Abbott, right?
Christopher Abbott.
I'm a big Girls
for
fan.
Fahim, he completely transformed in this
I
movie, by the
know,
way.
blew my mind. It took me probably 30 minutes, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Charlie from Girls. I know we're probably going to wait to talk about casting and performances, but as a preemptive thought, he was amazing. I thought his performance in this movie was so strong as Fahim.
Yeah.
Well, I
it's great.
think we can kind of actually get there because it was a really strong relationship. And it was a relationship that they did focus on from writing, from Kim, from truth. And I think it did last really well. And to center on Christopher Abbott for a little bit, I think there's a couple of big points. I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of jumping around. Phil normally leads these, and I'm like, we can just start there and keep going.
It's all right, let's do it.
But Christopher Abbott, first of all, completely camouflaged. If they're going to say almost anything about makeup and hair in this, I did not recognize him either.
I know.
But he also has controversy for being whitewashed. That's out there. And it's a main relationship for the movie. So I think those are... What are you hunting?
No, the whitewash, like Fahim.
So they've come out. People really look at criticize films for who they cast and in a racial way.
Oh no, it's a big issue.
way.
Like,
yeah,
I mean,
and
we just had Gods of Egypt.
it's just a nonstop. But Whiskey Tango Foxtrot has got its own criticism for it. The two people that have been pointed out are Christopher Abbott and also Alfred Molina.
Right.
Both of them play people who are not of their actual race. One's English,
That's
one's
fair.
mixed. And Tina Fey has had to come out and make a couple comments about it. Because of her role as a producer, she had a lot of advice in casting. So they knew that this could be a problem. She even, to the point when Christopher was cast, she did almost want someone else. She really asked the casting people, is there anyone else who we could get who is actually from like Afghanistan or has that racial background? And they really pushed for Chris. And then she was won over because she said his work ethic was so amazing because he really was putting in this research because he was doing so much.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones where, for me, the thing with the whitewashing argument is I think that, yes, you do want... It is more helpful to have people of a certain race play their race because it helps with believability.
Yes.
But with both Christopher and Alfred's roles, I believed them.
I know. I did too.
I really did believe them. So I don't want to punish them for not being that race. But I was like, but for me, it really, really worked. I did believe them in all the roles they did.
If you're making the choice to not cast an ethnically true character, that actor really, really needs to bring it. I think it's really important because, of course, the problem is if you bring on someone white to play someone ethnic and they don't put in a good performance, you're really validating the criticism that you need. And like I think there are examples when it has been an issue. But I will say in this movie, especially Christopher Abbott, to me, I'm not sure I was as sold by Alfred Molina's performance. But yeah, I mean, like it was for anyone. It's another example would be like, I don't know if you guys have seen Transamerica with Felicity Huffman. Like she is obviously like a cisgender woman playing a man getting surgery to become a transgender woman. But her performance is so good that critics couldn't get upset because they were like, if the job is to create, well, like what you said, if the job is to create a believable character, that's what acting is. It's transforming yourself to play someone. So you can't really criticize an actor if they accomplish that task.
I guess the question becomes at that point, where is the line? And I think that's why people get into such trouble about this is that where is the line? Like, is it okay to cast a white person as somebody who's half white or half like? But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's such a messy situation. I think it does have to come down to what you're saying. It comes down to believability and like how well do they capture? Because like if you go to the other extreme, you're doing Tropic Thunder. With Robert Downey Jr. But like. I really liked Alfred Molina in this role.
For me, I
thought he did a good job.
There's two tests. The number one test is believability, acting-wise, strong performance. So, like, emotionally engaging, connected to, number one. Number two, for me, there is one where if you held up just a picture of that person and said, this person is this, would I believe you or wouldn't I? If you hold up a person and you're like, this person is Pacific Islander, and they do not look Pacific Islander to me, I'm like, no. But if you hold a picture, I could say, oh yeah, I could see that. Mm-hmm. You could make me believe that. Then why shouldn't you be cast?
Yeah.
Are you referring to Emma Stone?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're saying. But, I mean, it's just something that, I mean, I'll bring my reasons. I'm mixed. And a lot of people don't believe it, but they'll tell me, they'll also say that I look things that I'm not. Like, I've gotten that I'm like French, and I'm like, I'm no French. I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you bringing to the table, Sarah? I'm curious
what does
now.
a French person look like?
I know.
Right. I'm half Hispanic and half white.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of people just think I'm full white,
Right.
and then I mean other people who are like, oh, I totally think you look Hispanic. It's just who you're talking to.
Right.
But advocating for myself, if I should be able to play a Hispanic person because I'm part Hispanic. But I also think that since I've gone to Italy and people tell me I look Italian in Italy, that I shouldn't have a ban against playing Italians.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, and it gets a lot blended. Like, I'm part Armenian,
Mm-hmm.
so like that alone, like I've gotten Italian before. I got Puerto Rican once. That was weird.
see, like, but if you get it, don't you think you should be able to play it? Because you're like, well, people have told me that.
I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. It comes down to believability and just like, if you're not just changing it over to something that it's not. You're not changing the ethnicity of the character. And that's, I think, the big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like there are movies who just decide, well, that's not important to this character, so we'll just cast the most famous face that we can. This was, we cast the best actor, and that actor became that character. Like, Alfred Molina became this Afghani politician, and Chris...
I agree with Chris Abbott. I don't know if I agree with Alfred Molina.
So I feel like we're getting more into
right.
story,
Well,
more
I wanna-
into cast. We can expand from here. Let's talk about Tina Fey, Margot Robbie, Martin Freeman, our core characters, and how they really interacted in this movie. Do you guys have any favorite characters or any favorite relationships or least favorite characters?
I didn't mean
and
to cut you off
relationships?
earlier.
No. I want to hear it.
Yeah. If I'm talking performances I loved Tina Fey's performance. Actually loved Margot Robbie's performance. I thought, it's funny, I feel like when she first came on the scene, I guess Wolf of Wall Street was really her breakout role, right? I feel like people really wanted to box her into kind of this young newbie, how did she get this role? But she's proved herself time and time again that she's a great actress. And I think sometimes in Hollywood it can be tough for like insanely beautiful bombshell women to be taken seriously as performers because people like to just kind of treat them as a sex symbol a little bit.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. But she, I think time and time again has proved that she's the real deal as an actress.
She has a very strange age fluidity for me.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I can't, like, I know how old she is. I believe she's about to be 25.
Come on.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Phil, you are our engineer for us today. Is there any way you can look up Margot Robbie's
I'm doing
age?
it right now.
Okay, because
I will look up her age. I think she's 25
I'm
to
pretty
26.
sure-
1990.
Yes,
You're right.
Yes, exactly. See, she has this age.
25.
Thank you. She has an age fluidity
You're right.
about her, where she is co-starring, or she is starring with people like Tina Fey, holding the mature like. This one maybe not as mature.
I
but
would have said
Wolf
her
of Wall
character in this
Street.
was probably 35.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
played that believably.
Yeah.
But like now that I think about it, if I go back a few months to The Big Short, like she looked like she was 22.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's 25
right.
years old.
You got to see her in Z for Zachariah.
That was good.
That's really telling
She's
of her
25.
acting chops.
So she's doing very well. To her, okay, now let's talk about her relationship with Tina Fey in this. How it was utilized. For me, it did a little bit of something different where it did have your women bond from the get-go instead of being rivals from like first eye contact, which to me was sort of nice. Did you guys see her big, like her turn coming?
No.
That surprised me.
Okay.
Which I like. I was glad I was surprised by that. And it was a cool choice because I think a lot of times, to your point, movies will pit women against each other, then they eventually make up. And this movie's like, no, screw that archetype. We're gonna have them start as friends and then not mend their relationship.
It's a very real life situation, like for anybody, women, men, whatever. It's you befriend somebody and then life takes you in a certain direction and it splits you apart.
Yeah.
Not always massive professional betrayal.
And that was
but
a producer choice by Tina Fey that they would be friends from the get-go. Just because it was two women surrounded by men, she figured, why wouldn't they be friends?
Yeah.
You don't have very many other people. Then we have Tina Fey's love. At first, what she thought is going to be a triangle, but that just isn't a triangle, with her bodyguard and then also Martin Freeman's character, who's the freelance photographer. How about the love angle of this story? Work for you guys?
It did, actually. I think just on the strength of these two actors, really. Like, at first, it had a good flow to it, where at first you're like, yeah, he's a jackass. Like, don't hook up with him. He's just a weird, like, little Scottish guy. But then you sort of, you get to know him and like you get that sense that like he is putting on that tough attitude because of where they are. Like he does betray it. So when he talks about the cottage and everything, like that he is not like just a all around like hardened person. He has this softer side and this sort of outlook on life that I think is why he resonates eventually with Kim. Is that they both have that, there's another life to this, but they're so in this world that they can't imagine being anywhere else.
Interestingly, I wanted to love this subplot and something about it, and it's going to be hard for me to quantify what exactly it was, which I know is not necessarily fair. His name was Ian, right, this character?
Yes.
I had trouble getting on board. I had trouble kind of like shipping Ian and Kim in this movie. And I think part of it is it kind of felt expected for like the douchey jackass guy to eventually attract the woman, like kind of neg her and bring her in. I feel like we see that so often in rom-coms.
I think he negged her.
I don't know. He was kind of... It just felt like something I've seen over and over again. And I sometimes have trouble believing that in movies when like this guy is kind of like passive-aggressively treating a girl poorly, and that's like sort of what attracts her.
But here's the thing. Negging is like intentionally like tearing down a woman to like somehow make them like.
Could you say like maybe light negging?
I kind of felt like he was doing that.
I don't know. I disagree because that was more just treating her like he would treat any other person.
Okay.
And like you, especially like guys love to just rag on each other. You make fun of each other.
Yeah.
It's not about like being mean or anything. It's friendly.
Yeah.
Like I had to learn the line of that when I like first got into college. It's like not everybody gets that humor, but that's his style. And I think again, it's about protecting yourself in an intense situation. Is you have to deflect anything even remotely bad, you have to, or good, like it's all at risk when you're in a war zone like this. So like picking on everyone for their little quirks is just a way to diffuse the humor, to diffuse the tension, right?
Yeah, that's kind of his MO. Like you're right, that was sort of the way that was who he was. I guess it didn't seem, it felt weird to me that Kim did eventually kind of fall in love with him, and we did see another side of him, but I guess because there were so many things that this movie did for women that I loved. Like I feel like this was a really strong feminist movie, which I would expect from Tina Fey. And it's the thing I loved was it wasn't like in your face feminism. Tina Fey's feminism is it's so important that it's just like women are people. It's just like women are in the mix. You know what I mean? It's not trying to. I don't know. I just felt like this movie was a really good movie for women, and I felt like her falling in love with him made me step back a little bit.
It would have I think it would have if he had like followed her back to Washington D.C.
Yeah.
It just like became a love story. But because their story didn't like wrap up in a neat bow, like falling in love is part of life.
Yeah.
That's just part of who we are.
I'm kind of in the middle of this because I was fine with her, Kim and Ian's relationship, and I was happy that it wasn't the star relationship for her.
Right.
Yes.
I was happy that, like, this wasn't I totally want these two people together. But I kind of liked that it was a war movie not about a love story. Tina Fey has a lot of Kim and other two male relationships in this. You do have Kim and Ian. Then you have Kim and like the military, a whole, from officers to generals to soldiers. You have all of her relationships there, and then you have also her relationship with her fixer. And if I was going to prioritize which ones I liked most, it was with the fixer, number one. I thought that was the most authentic and just the most engaging, and had all these weird little like thoughts about like life and relationship and how touching is looked at in that culture, and how
just cross-cultural connection, like
fantastic.
It's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Like, as much as like I liked the relationship between Kim and Ian, I thought Kim and Fahim was the star pairing, because it wasn't about like, and that's the thing. It's like I didn't mind the love part because it wasn't like
the focus.
It's about her falling in love in Afghanistan, and like no, it's just a part of her existence there.
Yeah.
But even more important was the fact that she made a connection, a strong connection to somebody who is completely from a different culture. They fed off of each other. Like, she gave him tips from Oprah, and he helped her with everything that she was going through in this new world.
And I liked how they just tried to like, they were communicating enough that they were connecting, but it wasn't transformative for the other person. Like, neither of them were really trying to make the other one assimilate completely in their culture or take on the other culture's values. It was like, I'm very respectful of your values, but I also care about you, so we're gonna make this relationship work.
It was little things, like she came to respect what he believed, and he came to understand stuff like feminism by the end of it, where he like the touch was like a very small, just like I acknowledge you, like we are connected thing. But like even just in the car where he's talking about his two kids, and he's like, the daughter, she is stronger.
Yes.
Like that's such a little thing, but for somebody from that culture to say that's a big deal.
And to capture that on film, and like have that be a story point, it's really, really nice.
You guys are like nailing it for me, and I think you're also showing me another problem I had with the Kim-Ian relationship, because I loved the Kim-Fahim relationship so much, was like, because I think when you describe the movie as Kim's relationship with different men in different groups, and Margot Robbie, that really was the movie, was how does she assimilate and interact?
Well, the movie is, how does this woman figure out her life or move forward in her life?
Yeah.
And it isn't, you don't get that she has a goal.
Right.
There isn't, I'm going to be a star reporter by the end of this. I'm going to be reporting from New York. It's, no, I just need to escape and find something new.
You're right.
That's the story.
Totally. And so I think what I'm realizing now is that like her relationship with Fahim felt so true and like beautiful, and her relationship with Ian felt like a little movie-y, if that makes sense. And I kind of wish the movie would have either gone like very naturalistic, kind of like neutral look at her experience, or like gone for the really movie-y structured script, stakes, goals. And I feel like by making the choice to have Fahim's relationship feel very true and Ian's feel kind of movie-y, rom-com-y, I was a little bit confused, if that makes sense.
I would say that of all the relationships that I looked at with her, I thought that most of them really made a statement or a point or pointed to a theme, whether it was about cultural acceptance, whether it was about when she's operating with the military and you're kind of getting that, what is the acknowledgement of power and how things work. When you have her dealing with Melina's character and kind of like, where's the line of corruption?
Yeah.
I have a bed in my office now.
That's probably past the line.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
And Margot Robbie, it's like women working together versus against each other. And then you don't have as strong of a statement to make about Ian's character.
Yeah.
There's not as, like, if I were to gain something from that storyline, it was that love is just a part of life.
Yeah.
And things come it comes and goes. And for me, that's why they could have that end scene you have where they're both face in face on the TV monitor and they're having an interview across. I was like, this should be an after credit scene. Like I wanted that to kind of move because it wasn't as important for me. It was interesting, but it wasn't.
Well, that was just for me. That was about that life after the war. Like their lives continued, and like they didn't. Again, it's not the super Hollywood story like where they like. He rushed over to DC and like interrupted a news broadcast
with
to
a rose
exclaim
on
his
one
love.
knee.
No, all we got was just a little smile.
Yeah.
And like, sure, we'll have coffee. But I think that their relationship and the way that it played out was very much about how like it's just like how like when Kim first got there and what was Margot Robbie's character's name again?
Tanya?
Tanya,
Yeah.
yes. And when Tanya said like, "Oh, here you're a 10, and I'm a 15."
The 4, 10, 4.
Yeah. That
or whatever that rule was.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Something like that.
But that applies the same way to Kim's relationship with Ian, where like when you're in a situation like that, where like most of the people around you are off limits in a way, or are just not. You're not going to connect with them because of the cultural clash or the fact that they're working for a rival agency, you're doing the same job, or any number of these other factors. When you work together with someone and they all lived in the same complex for 3 years, like I don't care how much differences you have would have in the real world. In the kabubble, like you're gonna find somebody that you're attracted to. That's just human nature.
That's a good point, Zach.
And when she saw him like defend her to Mr. Canuck, whatever his name was,
Mr. Non-Kiwi, actually Canadian.
That's really funny. Are you American Canadian? She was just like, all right. I like you now. Like, you're not all just bravado, like, being a jerk. Like, you're willing to stand up for what you believe in. And, like, yeah. And that guy was sort of a weirdo, too. He's like, you want to have sex?
Well,
he's just straightforward with it.
He was just one of the taking this movie and not making it a criticism or something about war, but rather a comedy. Like, we were just chuckling over saying one of these jokes right on our panel. I don't know if this was a laugh out loud movie for you guys or if it was.
I laughed out loud like a couple times, like not constantly. It wasn't like I was like uproariously loud, but I wasn't like dying of laughter, but I laughed.
Yeah, there's a few.
There was a few really funny scenes. I think I wanted a little more comedy. This is, again, probably an issue of expectations. If I'm going in seeing Laurentina Robert Carlock, I think I'm expecting to laugh more. And this is probably a fault of my own, because I should have just taken a step back and tried to absorb the movie for what it was. But I wanted a funnier script.
Okay.
Personally.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't think, well, especially with this subject matter, I didn't need more comedy.
Yeah.
There's another quote from Kim Barker when she was talking about when they said and Tina Fey's involved and there were all these people. She said the thing I feared most is that we would be Anchorman in Afghanistan. A silly comedy. That's not my story.
Yeah.
No, for me they towed that line really well. Where I did understand that a war environment wasn't just completely heavy all the time. Right. I liked it. There was that comedy party aspect. I liked hearing about the military support of this movie, about the Pentagon support, because it is something where they're just trying to show the life behind it and not kind of hammer down the drama and death. Because, like, people, they said, like, people can't survive in those conditions if it's like that all the time. It has to be some aspect of like why you're doing this, which is normally for life and for comedy and for fun and for relationships. So I thought that they handled that very well. Getting into some more about the directing, the production, where this was made, how it was edited, all of those chunks of this film. There's a bunch of interviews online you can find from like, what was it, No Film? or something.
There was a No Film School.
No Film School
had a good article.
Really good article. Basically talking about the struggles they had with budget, creating this atmosphere. They were not, for the most part, in Afghanistan. They were in...
That was shocking to me.
Yeah.
They did the production design and just locations did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, we're talking about Albuquerque. They created, what was it? There's sets that were about 2 blocks, I want to say.
Like they said 2 blocks in like a circle.
Yeah.
That they could just like drive around and
in the same circle.
Aaron Sorkin style.
Yeah.
The walk and talk.
Yeah.
The drive and yell.
Yeah, but it's just the same sets going around and around.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's what they had.
Because that's all you need. Like when you're looking, especially out of a car window, like if you see just people mulling about, like you're not hyper focused on what's in the background as long as what's in the foreground is engaging you.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why they couldn't just like reuse the same streets. I think they referred to it as Flintstones. It was like, it was Ficarra said it's like a Flintstones episode.
Driving past the same background over and over. They also use techniques like using B-roll from other Paramount movies and stock footage. At any moment, there are about 1,200 or 300 visual effects shots in the movies. In this movie, from little things everywhere, like adds, subtractions, fixes, anything they could do. They did things like trying to not film or photograph mesas in Albuquerque, because even though there are some in Afghanistan, they thought it felt too American. They used 25,000 pounds of dust.
Wow.
Supposedly had 1 bag left at the very end. They reduced tons of dust just
Frame
to try
it.
to get this feeling.
Yeah.
They should have
Yeah.
just poured it in like one of those glass like cylinders and
Like
then
they do for
seal it
weddings
up.
now, like this sand from everywhere.
Yeah.
Just this is the dust from the movie. How pretty. But also, they had a lot of work with the military. One of their producers had a relationship, that would be Ian Bryce, from the military because of all of his work with Michael Bay. So since he's already done all these huge budget movies with the military, he just
That was
pulled
another
them in.
name that like caught me up. It's like Ian Bryce, like that's the guy that he does Transformers.
Right.
Like his name on this project, like between him and Lorne Michaels, I was like, who produced this? Like
It is a
what's
fascinating
happening?
conglomeration.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
But it makes sense. Like when you look at the end product and look at like who's behind it, like it all makes sense.
Yes.
It all like you can feel everybody's hand in this.
And you can feel who like brought everyone else with them.
Yeah.
Like who is connected, whether it be like Margot Robbie getting pulled in by the directing team because she like talks to them about scripts on set. Like everyone was kind of like, we kind of know each other. Neat, make a movie.
Right.
It's like I wonder if the first day on set was like that awkward moment when like 2 groups of your friends are
Yeah.
meeting for the first time. You're like, oh god, I hope this
Like,
goes well.
I brought this person and this person to the party. Who'd you bring?
I hope they started with the party scene because that would be the perfect way just to break down all like barriers and hesitations.
Yeah.
So also involved, so the military was very involved. That's how they got the helicopter shoots, did stuff like that.
Yeah, it looked like they had to have military involvement.
Yeah, and then the Pentagon was really happy, especially with the messages about amputees and vets and what was like a war zone. So all of that was really applauded. The air place that was helpful was Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. So they were right there to be convenient to help out, which is and the section of the base is called Bagram Airfield. So also the second AD was a lieutenant colonel in the Marines. So he was chasing accuracy, although according to IMDb, they weren't completely accurate with their uniforms, rankings, and what the people were calling themselves.
There was one thing I noticed that seemed like, and I don't know, like I'm gonna say it straight up, like I don't know military protocol or like dress code, anything like that. But there was this one moment when the Marine like strike team is boarding the helicopter to go save Ian, and it didn't look like any of them were wearing body armor. It looked like they just had like the like regular military like jumpsuits on, and I'm like, they should be wearing a lot more armor.
Yeah.
You're like, this is for me. I don't notice all the little details.
I didn't either.
Like
That was the only one that jumped
you.
out at me, only because I'm like, you're going to like storm a base.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're just like going for a jog with a gun.
For me, it just worked enough because like I have family that was in the military, I have family that went to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I have cousins Marines, all that stuff, and all the stories I ever heard about the war were always ridiculous. So this kind of worked for me, like from the fact that all of his Marine buddies have like tattoos of penguins on their arms, and to like they were in charge of, I guess, I don't even know, whatever. They're in charge of like getting palaces and setting up barriers, and the amount of time that you're kind of just like
waiting around.
Yeah, and doing random things like.
When I read that this was shot in New Mexico, I was astounded. They did such a great job with this production design, and when you think that like this is the same New Mexico that like Breaking Bad takes place in, it shows you how important and like hardworking and incredible these production designers are, because those are two totally different locales. So props to this whole production team.
Yeah, the production looked great. I don't think there's too much. We normally do a section on wardrobe and makeup. I don't think there's too much involved with this one, besides like the most standout piece is probably the blue burqa. It's the most vibrant thing in probably the entire movie, which is just ironic.
And the armor thing. Like, I don't mean to make a big deal of it. I was just like, it's like a weird little thing that I just like, I noticed, and I like in the scene, I was just like, that's
wait a minute.
Odd. No. I think it honestly could have even come down just like a budget thing.
Yeah, which supposedly they didn't have too much of. The quote, we do have a quote for Tina Fey on the wardrobe as the greatest wardrobe of all time, because it was so comfortable. It was like bloodstone, fat boots, jeans, oversized jackets. It was the happiest I've ever been in any wardrobe ever.
Well, if you think about it, the one scene where she could have been like glammed up and had to have spent hours in makeup and hair and would have been the wedding, and her character didn't know she was supposed to dress up. So Tina Fey probably read that in the script and was like, hell yeah.
She's like, this is for me.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, she wore mostly sweatshirts through all of 30 Rock.
Yeah, that's true.
Just saying.
She said even more so than 30 Rock. I don't know.
I guess 30 Rock did have her in some ridiculous costumes here and there.
Right.
Probably more heels too, you know.
Maybe.
This was for comfort.
The burqa scene, I don't know if we're waiting to talk about it or
bring it up.
That was so great. That was probably the hardest I laughed, and it was that like perfect kind of sardonic, like socially important Robert Carlock humor that I love, because it played out exactly like every sexy makeover scene you've seen in any movie. Like it was like the conventions and the way it was shot felt like it could have been like Jennifer Love Hewitt walking down a staircase in the 90s,
to
you know?
me, we're talking about the entrance in the wardrobe where it's like kind of slow-mo and everyone's looking.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Miss Congeniality, Sandra Bullock coming out, where it's like so pretty, and then just at the end you hit a wall. Kind of.
And like what a beautiful way to kind of both mine comedy but also criticize these crazy standards for women in the Middle East, because I just felt like that was, I think, my favorite scene in the movie. I don't know how you guys felt, but
it was good. It was poignant, but again, this was one of the parts that I laughed because it's silly. It's silly, but it has a point.
Right. Yeah.
I thought the whole section of her in that garb was poignant.
Yeah.
From the fact that they started with such kind of like a light, funny approach to the end where she does risk the life of herself and those around her by going into something she wasn't. Like, I know that was an added scene that is not from Truth. They added that for.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I was actually wondering about that one.
Yeah, that one supposedly where she goes up, she enters the all men type of rally. That is not true, but I liked how they really included kind of a spectrum for that section of the movie, and it made a really strong point. And it also moved your plot along because it made sense, like how she was reacting, what she was causing, what was happening to her, this adrenaline, this unsafe nature, and how for me it kind of already crossed the line when she enters into the gun shooting and the bombing in the beginning with the camera. I was like, I know. What are you doing? But they're like, and then it was like, oh, great. And then this is too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought in this scene, I thought Fahim might like get killed.
I know, I was worried.
Or he's like mauled or something. Like when he's like trapped outside the van for like a moment, I legitimately was like, oh no, Fahim. No, get in the car. Okay.
But isn't that kind of great? Like I
was scared for that character.
I love when movies can actually make you feel like something's going to happen to one of your leads.
Yeah.
And I think it did that really, really well. All right, so we've talked a lot more about this movie. Let's talk about a more technical thing, editing. So I think we both found this article. Go ahead.
Shocked me. Well, no, I mean, They edited it on Final Cut X?
Yes.
X?
Yes. So not only did they edit this movie on Final Cut X, but they also supposedly edited Focus on Final Cut X. But they say that there's a lot of benefits to it, that them being Ficarra. He has come out and said that they really do approve this method. I think we have a picture, but they said that a lot of the tool sets are really helpful. One of the quotes is, "It's what they intended." It gives you, you're watching the director's cut almost right away, and it's saving a lot of time. And as we know in film, time saves money, which is a big thing. They were able to edit in full resolution with 2K. They acted as their own laboratory because they stored a copy of the original files in the editing room. So they weren't paying the lab for pulls to do effects. They could generate their own DCPs quickly and easily, so they could do screenings at any moment, which is great. The audio tool was advanced enough where they didn't have to go into Pro Tools and back, so that's a time suck that they avoided. And they said everything was kind of all in the family, and that, again, felt like film school. They were all under one roof. They were working together toward the same goal and worked incredibly quickly and collaboratively, so everyone could talk to everybody. They weren't spread across the earth trying to do these things. So as much as Final Cut X might seem shocking, they seem to be very happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, like, however you can best use a system, like there's nothing, like, the effects are not being done inside Final Cut.
Right.
Like, the effects are done in, I don't even know what they would have used in this movie, but like
iMovie. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But like at a certain point, you're just assembling a movie from like shot and then shot and then shot, transition,
telling
shot,
a story,
transition, shot, and like if it works for them, it works for them. Like personally, I edit on Adobe Premiere because it's become this immensely powerful program, especially when you're dealing with web video, and it's just like you need to just like crank through things. I haven't done much with Final Cut X because it's not a system that like I'm used to.
Yeah, and it was criticized for a while.
What?
A lot of people didn't like it.
They still are like, why is this a thing?
But
it's why Premiere has taken off so much, is because it in the absence of a new Final Cut in that style, in the style of 7, people were like, well, we're going elsewhere. But it is interesting to hear that there are true professionals making good quality movies in in a different type of editing system.
Well, it just goes to argument that you hear all of the time right now, which is that if you want to make a movie, almost every director will tell you to go out there and make it.
Yeah.
People are just like, from movies like, what was it, Tangerine that we saw on iPhone? Like, these systems are becoming more available, less expensive, easier to get. Almost every director you'll hear an interview of, if they say they have any advice, it's that to just go out there and make whatever you think about making, because you can get the quality pretty high. And it's just...
This thing shoots 4K.
Yeah.
Like, this device in my hand shoots 4K. That's double what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, shooting this movie in. I'm sure they shot in a higher resolution than the 2K they were doing cuts in. But, like, 2K is what you see on a normal TV. Yeah. Like, these are all 1080, which is 1920. That's what they're talking about with 2K. Like, your iPhone does double.
So, if you're on here, if you're watching us because you love film and you have something you want to make, just go make it.
Right. It's just, sorry, I exclaim because I still don't, like, fully, like, comprehend that fact. It's nuts.
Crazy.
But, like, it is. I mean, you could just do anything. And that's why they were able to pull this off. For, what was the final budget on this one? We
are going to get to the budget of $35 million. That's estimated.
That's pretty low.
Yeah.
And also, that's surprising because there are very few movies made for that budget.
It's a weird
anymore.
budget in today's climate.
Yeah, it wasn't like 10 years ago. Like, that was like an average movie. Like, now it's like $2 million or $100 million and nothing in the middle.
Yes, that
the
is
funny thing,
very
all
much
of Lauren's
horrible.
movies, though, are mid-budget. Like, they're almost always between 20 and 40. Which
All
is
whose?
Lauren. Like, Lauren, any Broadway video movies.
Comedies tend to be a little bit different just because it's like the bulk of the budget winds up being your actors.
Right.
So that varies. But, yeah, like a drama like this doesn't usually have...
military
They're usually
war.
like maybe we'll give you 5
Yeah.
if you can get it done.
All right, well, before we get into all of the box office numbers and all that, we do have one more thing that I wanted to address, which was the sound and music. Typically, there are movies where soundtrack kind of fades into the background for me, or the opposite, where you see Deadpool and it was fantastic. For me, one of the lowest points of this movie was the soundtrack. It bothered me. I thought that they chose a sound that was, for me, I think that they were going for a comedic approach to the normal war scenario movie, from when they're like picking up Ian from being kidnapped, and it's not intense music. It's like some song with lyrics about like love or relationships or something. But it didn't strike a chord enough for me for it to. A lot of the music wasn't recognizable except for Jump Around.
Right.
And it didn't hit strong enough as like, this is the polar opposite. This is funny and fun in a deathly situation. I just wasn't. It was so present that I could hear it and it was distracting, but it wasn't strong enough that I was like,
Intentional.
it's ironic and funny.
Yeah.
It just didn't get me.
It's funny. I hear what you're saying, where if you're going to employ music, it either needs to be complimentary or it needs to be super intentional. Like, there needs to be a reason for it. I was not distracted by it, so I didn't have the same response you did. There was never a moment. Editing is the same way for me, where, like, both music, editing, and production design, all of that never took me out of the movie. So I don't have the same criticism you do. I don't know how you feel, Zach.
I didn't really notice it, to be honest.
It's just me.
Yeah, no, that's
It's just
fine.
me.
I mean, that's what this is for. But
no, if you go and watch it again, I was just kind of like, why is this song in here? Like, I think you're trying to be different.
yeah,
You're trying to do something different, but it's not working for me.
it didn't work for you.
And it really pulled me out. If I had to, my criticisms of the movie kind of boiled down to, I really liked the chunk of once she was in Afghanistan with the soldiers. I got really interested as soon as she started interviewing. And for the middle chunk, liked a lot of the themes, liked a lot of the characters, wasn't involved in the knitting, didn't like the music, and thought a lot of the end could be moved to after credits, and you could have ended with like the vet or something.
Yeah, if we're going to talk a little bit about structural issues we have with the movie, I kind of, and you guys are probably going to disagree with me on this, which is fine. I sort of wish this movie was a little more structured. And I know some people have really responded to it because it wasn't. It really was just one woman. It's a portrait of a woman in her time in, a fish out of water kind of story. I kind of would have been interested to see this movie be more of like, you mentioned Fargo. I almost wish, I was thinking, what if this movie was about the kidnapping and it was more of a stakesy, plot-driven movie? It's because the original movie was called the Taliban Shuffle. I think all through development, I expected it to be a very structured, plot-oriented, stakesy goal kind of movie. And I kind of think maybe because I went in expecting that, I sort of wish it would have been that instead of sort of this just journey kind of narrative.
I mean, I liked this structure because it did still have the 3-act structure built in, and yeah, this the back half of the movie was slower. The second act slowed down a lot, but that was sort of it was the point.
True to
the
life.
whole point was that her time in Afghanistan was not just ratcheting up and up and up and up until kidnapping, and then we have to leave because I can't take this anymore. It was, I'm in. This is what I've been searching for my whole life, and then it hits a wall at a certain point where, because we as a country stopped paying attention, all of a sudden she didn't have anything to do, and it became a question of what, if you felt what is the point of her doing anything right now? Well, that's because that's what the character was going through. The character was going through a crisis of, what am I, no one cares what I'm doing here anymore.
Yeah.
She found the thing that defined her, and then nobody cared.
Right.
And I can't imagine dealing with that.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the slowness.
Yeah.
I really liked the center chunk of this movie. It's not quite just the second act. It's a little bit before the second act, a little bit after. But I felt like I could just trim off the ends. I didn't need as much. I also thought there was the interesting play of, since they gave you the opening scene of the party that was in a year.
Yeah.
There was so many. There wasn't a lot of risk or fear or anything attached because I knew we had a couple more years of her being there.
Right.
I knew what she was going to progress to from knowing the language, kind of knowing her way around, all of these things, that there wasn't a lot of like
Stakes.
suspense
Yeah.
or stakes because I was like, oh, I know she's going to be here. I know she's still going to be here in this many years, and I know that somehow there's going to be a bomb at that point. Or like that's
I think I would have liked some more stakes. And your point is true, Zach, that like it was about her journey. And all that being said, I loved how original this movie was. And because it was about a woman in Afghanistan, that was enough for me that it was like pretty badass and like I was along for the ride. Had this movie been about the journey of a straight white male having the same kind of internal existential problems, I don't know if I would have been on board.
Well, it wouldn't have been the same. I mean, that's the thing. Like, gender does play into a story.
Yeah,
like, at the
for
end
sure.
of the day, it does. And this story was part of what made the story so good was because it was about a woman, and that not just like, oh, it's a woman's story, it's a female story. No, it's because
it's not a woman's story; it's a fish out of water story.
Yeah, and you talk about, and like when you're making a movie, when you're writing, especially comedy, and like not that this is a comedy thing, but you always go to the extreme. The extreme is always where you want to go, and if you got to pull it back, you pull it back. But like the extreme of being a fish out of water in this scenario is being a woman, because half the people in the country won't look at you or talk to you. Like we saw it when she goes to see Alfred Molina's character. Like he doesn't acknowledge her for like a solid 2 minutes. Like he's just talking to Fahim, even answering her questions sort of, but without addressing her.
Yeah. It was, and that was very like touchy to watch, but in a good way.
Yeah, those scenes rang really strongly with me.
So we've talked a lot about this movie. We are now going to get into some numbers before we move on. As we've said before, the budget was
not many numbers, unfortunately.
Not many numbers. No, the budget was $35 million for opening weekend. You had tracking stated that it was going to be around 10 to 12 million, and it was over 2,000 theaters, which is a very wide release. Big movies normally range from about 2,200 to 3,500 theaters. All of those are like movies that are getting marketing, getting commercials, getting anything like that.
The Hunger Games, for example.
Yes. So had plenty of room to gain money, but really didn't. Its opening weekend only came in at 7 million. So if it was supposed to do 10 to 12, that's like, it's not good. It did come up against Zootopia, which pulled in a ton of audience, but this one just really, really didn't get the people excited.
Yeah.
And I think that, Jeff, you had an article about some of the notes on why, I think it was The Wrap.
It was The Wrap,
said that it didn't do too well.
Yeah.
Did you want to tell us some of them?
Well, yeah, first of all, from a personal standpoint, I had a problem with the title of this movie. I've always felt like when you're titling a movie, you should be able to just say the title, and someone should at least have an idea of what the movie's about, or you can't really expect numbers. Because like if you go to like some family in Idaho and say, would you see a movie called Whiskey Tango Foxtrot? They probably assume it's going to be like Richard Gere teaching someone dance lessons or something. Like, there's just no resonant. The movie was originally called The Taliban Shuffle, which, while maybe a polarizing title, at least gives you a sense of what you're going to see. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. From a personal standpoint, I don't think the title of the movie is very good.
I liked the title, but as I say that, I also acknowledge like it is confusing, to most people.
Which is maybe the point. Which is thematically true.
Yeah.
I think that from a marketing standpoint, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot has gotten a lot of buzz for the WTF. I do think that for me, if I just had a list of titles, it would be interesting. I don't know that I particularly fits this. I know that HBO supposedly is also supposed to come out with something called Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Yeah.
I think that I don't want to bash the title. I don't know what the title added to this movie besides people talking about WTF and it being good for like Twitter.
Yeah. I think creatively, like I liked it. Like if you had like a list of like 10 titles for this movie, this would probably be amongst my favorites. Like that's funny. That's like you're saying WTF without saying it. Great. But it is because like not everybody knows necessarily what that stands for. I'm always a little surprised nowadays when people don't, but like I see it sometimes. Like people are asked like we see it in like chat roles on like AfterBuzz shows. Like people are like, "What's WTF?"
Really,
like,
still.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody knows that.
Yeah,
and like if you're trying to market a mass appeal movie,
right?
The title is your book cover. And like as much as like we want to say don't judge a book by its cover, like that is how you judge. That is the first thing that you look at, because like that's all you've got. If you're looking at a list of movies, like what am I going to see this week? Zootopia, I get it. I know exactly what I'm in for with that. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, WTF is that?
Yeah, it's an example of it comes from Robert Carlock's genius. Like it's a great title for what the movie is. Is it gonna like attract my parents to go see it? Probably not.
It's a smart title. It's not a marketing title.
Yeah.
I think that we've talked about this earlier, how the writing in this really tried to push Tina Fey to a different genre, and it was also bringing in the comedy aspect to war. Both of those things are not something that people are automatically familiar with or recognize like as what to expect when they go see that movie. And I think sometimes that can be deterring. And I think that's what happened for this movie. No one really was like, well, if it's a drama, do we know that Tina Fey can do a drama? That's not for a lot of audience, that's not for sure. Then you have the other side where it's like, well, maybe it's Tina Fey and a comedy, but is a comedy really going to work for Afghanistan? And then what this movie did well, and why I did like it, was it did blend those two together, where it wasn't a straight comedy, and Tina did rise to the occasion of adding the dramatic elements. So what they did worked, but you only know that by seeing the movie.
Right.
And you don't know what to expect in the movie, because I think that subconsciously it could easily fail for someone. Like, oh, well, I don't want to see people laughing about war, like over the top, like Anchorman as Anchorman in Afghanistan. Or what if Tina Fey is not her element?
Right.
I mean, it didn't do that. It defied those, but there has to be a reason why people don't go to see this movie.
Well, I think it's like the movie did defy those expectations, but the audience, still had those expectations. So yes, once you see the movie, those go away. But that doesn't change the fact that when you're deciding where to spend your $12, and that's the other thing. It's like
to 15 in LA.
Yeah. Like the price that movies are at nowadays plays a factor, and that's why budgets are so polarized generally, is because it's hard for most people to justify spending $12 on a movie like this.
Yeah.
Because like when there are big movies coming out like Zootopia, where like you want to bring kids if you have kids, you want to like, or if you're just an adult who is very childish.
Yeah.
Or you're saving up your money for the slew of summer movies that are big hits that like everybody needs to see, because then everyone's going to be talking about it. Nobody's like, oh, you haven't seen Whiskey Tango Foxtrot yet?
No one's going to hold it against you. It's not a huge topic of conversation as far as films come and go. The reception on Rotten Tomatoes as of yesterday had 62% for critic score and 65% for the audience. So not great, not horrible.
Right.
Lukewarm, as you put it, I believe, Jeff. Like, and I think my review is probably around there. I think that it's better than I expected. I think it's better than most people would expect, but it is not a film that's going to go down as probably a model for other films, or as the strongest performance from a comedy from Tina Fey.
I do feel like this is the kind of movie that could sneak in a Golden Globe nomination for Tina Fey, though. Because like if it's billed as a comedy, we're gonna have
which it will absolutely will be, and like there are arguments for and against Martian, but like in a world where Martian is a comedy, this absolutely
is a comedy.
is.
It's the kind of movie. Like I think she deserves to, because I think her performance was great. I feel like I've been a little critical, but I did like this movie a lot, and I think in terms of a Tina Fey star vehicle, it's a pretty important film in her what's the word I'm looking for? Career, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, she made a point to say like that this doesn't mean she's going to do more drama or wants to transition to doing hard drama. It was just like a case by case. Like, I like this story. I want to do this story. She'll be back to doing silly stuff.
And normally when you attack a project with that in mind, that you just like it turns out well.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what everybody should be striving for.
Right.
Like, Hollywood, listen. Just like the stuff you're making.
Right.
Just enjoy it for, like, part of the time you're doing it, and you'll get a good movie.
Yeah. Which this does too.
Don't make stuff you already hate.
Or that you think you have to make because it's going to turn out a money.
Yep.
Then it'll turn out some money, but no.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of what you were saying about Sarah, for those of you who are listening, I'm being vague. You were saying you went in and it was better than you thought it would be. Unfortunately, I kind of had the opposite thing where I went in, which is my fault. I should just learn to go into movies with no expectations, but I'm so bad at doing that.
It's so hard for everyone. You're not alone.
Look at the month this came out in.
Yeah, you're
measure.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Measure your expectations.
Yeah. But I probably would have expected this movie from the beginning to be like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then I went in and it just wasn't quite what I was hoping. But
what an interesting way to phrase it. If I were going to phrase it like that, I would have expected. I thought before actually looking at the Rotten Tomatoes ratings that people were giving it more of like a 40 or 50.
Yeah.
So I went in and I was like, oh, this is much better than what people are saying.
Yeah.
So you looked at the score.
I didn't look at the scores. That's just like word of mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, because I went in not having. I hadn't seen any reviews. Like, I managed to avoid it, which is how I prefer to see movies. It's like if I can manage, I try to get in before I hear all the opinions, so that I can try to form my own.
Right.
And then have it corrupted later.
Yeah.
Wonderful. No.
But I think the movie was better than a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes, is what I think. I feel like critics have been a little hard on this movie. Personally, I'd give it like a B for me.
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to give scores, aren't we? But
As long as we're not leading with this is why, I think it's fine. And Cinema Score did give it a B.
Okay.
So that's on par.
Yeah.
I think that
I give it 4 out of 5 popcorn kernels.
Nice.
I don't think any of us is going in being like, this movie was a waste of time.
Oh, no.
I think there's a lot of good points. I think that their strongest point for me was some of the story elements and themes and messages,
right,
which is always great to see a movie, and some strong performances. And it did better than expectations. So that's kind of my final thought. If there's any other facts you guys have or anything you felt I skipped over, feel free. If not, please just tell everyone where they can find you on Twitch and stuff like that.
I mean, if somehow you've made it to this point and haven't seen this movie, there's always like 1 or 2 people who are like, I was just watching this review. I haven't seen the movie. It's like, you should go see the movie.
That's true.
But I thought this was a good movie. It was great for the material that it was, and I thought it hit good points everywhere, and it managed to tell an important story. Maybe it's not a unique story, but I thought it handled it in a unique way that makes it more watchable for, even though it didn't find its wider audience, it is more palatable for a wide audience. And I think that is its biggest achievement, is getting you these very important stories about the world in a way that is more easily digested than like, this is depressing, war is the worst thing ever. Because I can't handle.
I know.
You can only do that so many times before I'm just like, oh my god, the world sucks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely liked this movie. There's truth to the fact that going to see a movie about a woman in Iraq, or Afghanistan, sorry, is just refreshing. That doesn't happen. So this movie could have been worse, and I probably still would have liked it because it was different, because that doesn't happen in movies enough. So I would definitely recommend this movie. I love Tina Fey, admittedly, but this was a great performance for her, and I think everyone involved should be really proud of what they made, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. So thank you guys so much for watching us here on the Popcorn Talk Network. We are Anatomy of a Movie. We dissect every genre, all the films that come out. The year is winding up normally. Oh, and this is the song. This
Is
is
it?
the song
I totally
from
hear
the
you,
kidnapping.
Sarah. My instant thought was, this doesn't fit, which is hilarious because that was the exact point that you made.
Exactly. No, but we love to talk about movies, and we love for you guys to talk about it with us. So as always, please continue commenting, rating, subscribing, all of that stuff. You can find me at Sarah_Stretton, or on Box Office Breakdown, or on Convito Rich, and soon on the Game of Thrones After Show on AfterBuzz.
Well, you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @ZachWilson, ThatzachWilson, and occasionally on Marvel Movie News as the voice of Doom, and over on AfterBuzz talking about all kinds of television. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just came back, Better Call Saul is going strong, and Daredevil Season 2 comes back next week. Stay tuned for scheduling on that one.
Yes, and you guys can follow me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham and on Instagram at Jeffrey Crane Graham. Thanks so much for tuning in.
If living is without you, I can't live. I can't give anymore.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.